Participants of this movement perfectly mastered the use of steel weapons in martial arts, are masters in the art of war, they study history and they train and practice useful life skills. This requires self-improvement, teamwork and a high level of endurance, but I am sure that all the difficulties are compensated when you engage in the sport that you love the most. We will find out in today's program how Ukrainian historical reenactors develop their capacity for endurance, will and character. Hello guys. Hello. What are your names? What will you tell us today? My name is Katya, my name is Anton, and I'm Yaroslav. Today we will tell you what medieval battle and reenacting is all about, how to start engaging in this form of sport, and what difficulties and delights you might have to deal with on this path.
Реконструкторы – это люди, которых в первую очередь интересует история.
Reenactors are people who are first and foremost interested in history. They like history and enjoy exploring sources and finding specific details,
Всякие источники, в частности археологические находки.
including archaeological finds and graphic sources. In addition to that, they read a lot of literature of researchers, scientists, and materials and chronicles.
Они реконструируют в первую очередь.
Based on these sources, they reenact, first of all, everyday life, some household items, and probably the most interesting things are costumes, clothing, offensive protective weapons, and a knight's armor.
То есть наступательно-защитное вооружение и защитный комплекс рыцаря, в частности доспехи. Эти люди...
These people are united by their interest in history, in some kind of tourism and spending time in a historic setting.
Время проведения досуга вот в такой обстановке исторической. Как оказывается, в Украине...
In Ukraine, there are a lot of such people. They organize their own local festivals and find a common ground with each other. There are a lot of those involved in such festivals, though mostly at the regional level.
Их очень много. В первую очередь, любовь к этому движению...
First of all, my passion for history brought me to this movement.
Мой такой единственный интерес по жизни.
It was my only interest in life. I didn't really do anything. I didn't attend any sports sections or clubs.
История мне всегда была интересна военная.
I had my own interest in history, in particular military and political history.
Я увидел фестиваль, проходил он в Каменец-Подольске.
Once I decided to visit the Kamenets-Podilsky castle, and at the same time there was a festival.
Очень поразило, что люди...
I was very amazed by the great attention of people to this event. I witnessed how it was reenacted.
Что это все...
For example, people found metal and blacksmiths to redesign defensive weaponry
Те же источники, они все это надевали.
in order to reenact the events of historical battles. It really surprised me, but at the same time it gave me such a thrill.
На вооружении меня реально это очень удивило и одновременно обрадовало.
Our sport is a great and very cool opportunity to appear in the tilt yard and beat someone. A few years ago, there were very few girls, and they had to perform in male nominations. I'm very pleased to say that now we have much more female fighters. This allows us to hold women's nominations at Ukrainian and World Championships separately.
Я занимаюсь этим спортом где-то около 4 лет.
I've been engaged in this sport for about 4 years, and I didn't have any special skills to start practicing it. The fact is that my whole life was tightly connected with sports, and there was a moment when my gym membership ended, and I saw some ads on social networks. I came to my first test training in this unique sport, tried it out, and realized that it was for me.
Я пришла на первую пробную тренировку, попробовала и поняла, что это мое.
Все началось с того, что я поступил в универ.
It all started with the fact that I entered a university in Kiev and wanted to develop my physical fitness.
Я увлекался.
At the same time, I was very interested in writing and wanted to study the mechanism of medieval battle, and I surfed the internet in search of the best club.
Так, интернет, окей. Первые лучшие сайты, самый большой клуб. Не, самое...
I enjoy the feeling of developing my skills and proving to myself that I can become better with every training session or battle.
Показал себя лучше, чем в прошлом. Что я побеждаю в первую очередь себя.
Реконструкция разделяется по эпохам.
Reenacting is divided into epochs. There are 4 of them.
4 основных направления. Первое – это античность.
The first epoch is antiquity of the times of the Roman Empire, which is a rather rare phenomenon, but nonetheless it is a part of history. The second epoch is the early Middle Ages, that mainly include reenacting of Scandinavian and Slavic peoples.
Быта и боевая часть, но так как очень мало
But since this period was mostly characterized with chain armor and helmets, it's quite dangerous to introduce it into sports nominations.
вводить этот период в спортивные номинации. И еще один популярный.
Another popular period is between the 14th to 16th centuries, when offensive and defensive weapons were actively developed, and this period itself was very interesting.
Сам по себе период интересный. Мне в первую очередь.
First of all, I was interested in Old Rus, because we are inhabitants of Ukraine. It is our native land and culture. But gradually, as I was distant from the possibility of being involved in that period, I had to focus more on the 14th to 15th centuries. Due to the fact that fully protective weapons are used in our battles, I began to draw interest in European costumes and accordingly battle armor.
И, соответственно, к доспехам.
Важно понимать, что в нашем движении
It is important to understand that in our movement, there are not only sportsmen, but also those who get a thrill from reenacting.
конструкция, то есть они любят именно до мелочей продумывать.
They like to think out every detail of their image, how they behave, how they look, and what dishware they eat from during festivals.
Как они выглядят. Думаю, для меня здесь интереснее
As for me, I'm mainly interested in physical activity.
составляющая, физическая нагрузка. И
And if some details in reenacting are missing, then I try to compensate them with some kinds of sporting achievements.
Намного ближе мне все.
Fighting is much closer to me because reenacting, of course, is quite a beautiful spectacle. But the most important thing for me is practicality.
Практичность. В бою ты можешь понимать не только
Fighting with a sword helps me understand medieval fighting techniques. That gives me understanding of how to fist fight in any life situation.
в обычном бою, как бороться. Ты можешь побеждать в любой ситуации. Мой
My first fight was extremely interesting because, first of all, it was in the second week after I started practicing. Secondly, I fought against a strong and talented woman. Thirdly, she was the champion of Ukraine and the best athlete of the world level. And given this, naturally, she won the battle against me.
конечно же, я проиграл.
Клубов по Украине достаточно много. В принципе, они все
There are a lot of clubs in Ukraine. They all combine different directions.
и совмещают в себе несколько направлений. То есть это
A club can be simultaneously specialized in reenacting, sports, and even in role-playing. Therefore, everyone can find something to their liking.
что-то по душе.
стандартно я тренируюсь где-то
As a standard, I train 3 to 4 times a week for 2 hours. When I need to work out something, my training can last longer. For 2 hours, we train all together. This includes a physical workout,
общие принципы.
general principles of the technique that we use, and of course, sparring, when we compete with each other using soft equipment to maintain the health of our spines and bones.
Сохранять здоровье позвоночника, костей. Мне лично очень
I
нравится.
really like such a historical weapon as halberd. If I know that I have to participate at the World Championship to represent my country in this category, then I hone my skills and techniques individually in the gym. Sometimes I ask my coach for advice on how I can improve my techniques and skills to fight better against my opponents.
Делать лучше.
Со временем, конечно, тренировки меняются.
Over time, of course, workouts change, but their essence remains.
Пробег.
Everything starts from warming up the muscles, jogging or jumping rope, then doing a set of physical exercises to become stronger, more durable, faster, and then, of course, mastering techniques, which is mandatory for any fighter. And after that, we check all these aspects and adjust them in sparring.
Я, конечно же, люблю.
Of course, I like to read various articles on the internet.
И это
I
касается
mean articles about medieval events, famous figures of that time, as well as interesting points about military hardware.
интересные моменты по поводу боевых техник.
Постепенно, одевая на себя доспехи,
Gradually putting on armors and studying their elements, I wanted to get a profound understanding of their design to make something unique and comfortable for myself.
начать более глубоко разбираться.
I developed an interest in medieval fashion. It's not just trying on a costume that we were given in the club.
Уже ты не просто одеваешь костюм, который там тебе выдали в клубе случайным.
You begin to look for and create your own image.
Ищешь какой-то образ, создаешь себе. В основном из
I mainly made small handbags, belts, some convenient everyday items.
удобные детали там, быта. Но лучше обращаться.
But it's better to contact seamstresses who have experience with medieval costumes. They can make a technically appropriate historical costume for you.
И по внешнему виду.
Наш вид спорта довольно такой специфический, и
Our sport is quite specific, and it's very difficult to understand from the first training whether it's for you or not.
на первой тренировке никто тебе сразу не даст
In the first training session, you are not allowed to wear armor. This requires appropriate physical fitness and special training.
на первых этапах новичкам,
At the first stages, beginners are given the so-called club ammunition.
которая у нас есть именно для таких,
This equipment is used for training purposes,
посражаться, и потом, конечно,
but then our guys come to the conclusion that it is better to practice in individually designed armor.
когда он сидит по твоей фигуре, по твоему телу. Конечно, я
Of course, over time I decided to order individual armor, because using men's armor was not very convenient for me as a girl. It was large in size and in some moments harder and uncomfortable.
я пришла,
So I went to the blacksmith and he designed armor according to my measurements.
у меня такой доспех,
With this new armor, it became very comfortable for me to compete.
в котором мне удобно соревноваться.
Вначале я, конечно же, пользовался клубным снаряжением. Наш клуб
In the beginning, I used club equipment. Our club is pretty kind and generous in this regard. It can lend you equipment until you're able to have your own. Then I realized that I needed something reliable.
хорошее. Сначала я пробовал собирать
I started as a 14th century fighter,
орды 14 века. Но позже мне пришлось...
but later I had to change my mind because this equipment was very expensive and it broke very easily.
Ну и при этом мне
And yet, with respect to the aesthetic component, I prefer Western European armor and helmets.
европейская доспехи, особенно шлема.
Изначально, так как я не занимался никаким
Initially, as I was not engaged in any sport, of course it was hard for me to get used to physical activity.
тренировки, довольно
Very active workouts, heavy sports, and heavy armor equipment. Getting used to this takes quite some time, because wearing heavy armor requires a very high level of physical endurance. I gradually got used to all exercises and activities, and it seemed to come easy for me, but some technical moments arose. For example, in the sport of fencing, I felt that my skills were not effective enough, and I wanted to learn something new and in some way to diversify my personal style.
как-то разнообразить свой личный стиль.
На самом деле, я думаю,
I consider that there are difficulties in any sport at all stages. At the beginning, when you try to do something and you fail, you try again and again. And of course, when the moment when you achieve your ultimate goal comes, it gives you incredible encouragement to continue moving forward.
дальше.
Главная
The
сложность...
main difficulty in any sport is laziness. You should always overcome it, especially after victory in tournaments, when you feel relaxed and think that you can skip some workouts. So I recommend athletes to never become lazy and keep on training to the end to achieve victory.
В Украине проводится очень много соревнований.
There are a lot of competitions in Ukraine. If you wish, you can attend them every weekend in the regions and in large cities. There are also all Ukrainian festivals.
Все украинские. И особняком можно
A
выделить
special case is tenders for the selection of fighters to be accepted to the national team of Ukraine.
сборную Украины. Они проводятся
They're held in several versions, but they all have the single goal of selection of the best teams from all over the country to represent Ukraine at the international level.
более достоин представлять страну на международном уровне. Пока
We present our country quite well. Our athletes often fall into the top 3, and in many cases they win the highest medal. Our only rival is Russia. We're always happy to show to Russia the skills that our athletes have mastered.
на что мы способны.
Помню, конечно, свой первый
I remember, of course, my first championship. I remember when I first wore armor and how I was surprised that I could still move in this heavy apparel and even run.
такие довольно
Of course, I had fairly mixed emotions. On the one hand, I wanted to try this all. On the other hand, it's a bit frightening when you look at the entire world through a visor.
маленькими.
Having limited visibility, you see people in armor only through some small holes. And the understanding that now you will beat them or they will beat you gives you some kind of excitement. But as it was the championship of Ukraine, and I felt a huge responsibility, this helped me get rid of my fears.
Боязни, возможно, первых проб.
Я думаю, что это движение перейдет больше.
I think this movement will turn into a full-fledged sport. It is interesting, spectacular, and has a competitive element in effect. Fighters are more interested in winning, and there is always a prize pool. So I strongly believe that it makes sense to develop this sport, since it can be viewed as not only a simple beating of people, but a spectacular beating of people dressed in armored suits, not to mention its historical value.
В этом спорте